Hello and welcome to this course about Revit Architecture 2015 certification. This course is designed to prepare yourself to take the Autodesk Professional Revit Architecture 2015 certification. This certification is an excellent way to measure your knowledge about Revit Architecture 2015, as well as going deeper in some topics about how to perform proficiently with the tool. This course will guide you about evaluation topics with similar questions that you will have to solve in the certification exam. It's recommended that you have accomplished more than 400 hours using Revit and that you know its functionality. A certification is a quantitative measurement to give reference of my knowledge. It's completely oriented towards the exam. It's not a Revit modeling course. That's important. The official exam has 35 questions from which you need to pass 32 to get the certificate on a time cap of 2 hours 40 minutes. This course is based on metric units, that's important. It's divided on two phases, some review classes and a mock-up exam to get you familiar with the questions. The main objectives of this course is to familiarize you with the kind of questions that you may be asked, to go deeper on technical topics that may be missing, and to prepare to take the official Autodesk Revit Architecture 2015 certification exams. All the questions are multiple answer, even though on the exams you may have open questions, match columns, select an image, etc. Evaluate it and recommend it so more people can use it. Thank you and hope to hear from you on next classes. Now let's review the characteristics of a Revit Architecture certification exam. It's an online exam of 35 questions which you need to pass 32 in order to get your certificate. It has a high margin of difficulty and it's completely practical. That means that you need to answer questions by doing exercises on Revit. A lot of topics are complemented between themselves, but you need to follow all indications as written. Try to read carefully and to follow them, step by step. It has a lot of trick questions. I recommend you to reload files at the start and do not save them, so you can check that you have the proper files. Use the configuration units for each exercise unless you are asked to change them or you are specified to have special rounding options. The cost of the exam is $150, but you can also get some coupons or you can get some special fees if you go to Autodesk special events. The mock-up exam is designed with 27 questions with a little bit higher expectations, but it includes all the topics. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, let's start reviewing the project browser. The project browser is this window, for those who haven't known it yet, that allows all the structure of the views, the section, the plans, the legends, schedules, sheets, and the families. And the first thing they will ask you is, how to pull it, how to find it. Just go to view and you have this on the user interface to check it, the project browser. Then you can lock it on the left side, right side, and then use it. And the other thing important to know for a certification process is you need to know how to manage the properties on the view discipline from the browser organization. So far it has discipline, all not in sheets, face, type discipline. Each of these will set up a new way of setting your project browser. You can go to edit, check you have a filter option as well as on the schedules, and then group and sorting. So far it has discipline and family type. So we're seeing here the discipline is architectural, family and type is floor plans level 1 architecture. So if you want to change a property, you can do it from here. You can also create your new ones, and as well you can do the same thing with the sheets. They have it separated by all on this type of set, but you can change it or create your new ones. So they may ask you to do a change on the project browser, so check up for this. Let's review the copy monitor tool. The copy monitor tool will help you when you have a linked file, or also if you want to monitoring some things and you're working with work sharing, someone has moved it or want to move it. And it's located on the Collaborate tab, Copy Monitor. You can do it with your own project or with Select Link. And once you are in that panel, you have the options The option will help you when you're trying to copy elements from levels, grids, columns, walls, and floors, so the basic structure and architecture elements. For example, you can copy columns, but you can change what's the original type and then what's going to be your new type with that element, or also to avoid copying it. If you don't have that family, I recommend you that you copy the family first and then set up these copy monitor options. You can also split the columns by levels, the walls the same thing, and floors the same thing. And when you're having coordination settings, you can check up how they will be working. If you're mapping behavior or having some maps, or allow batching from those elements. This works when you're having multiple files and you want to coordinate them for interference, clash detection things. Next topic is to check up the import DWG files. You have that option on insert. You have the link cats or the import cats. The difference between them, you need to know it, since the import cat will have everything on your model and the link cat will have a reference to a file that it's on your computer. So you need to know how to import it. You have the options from current view, colors preserve, layers, import units, positioning to know if you're using origin, share coordinate, center, the place if you want it and only if you want to have it on one view. And with that said, you also need to check up for the manage links. On the manage links, you will have here the cat formats. Well, you have the reference where the file is placed. In this case, it has just a reference from the previously set up from the file, but it's no longer being linked with the proper file. If we want to check it up, this visibility, remember we have here a view template apply. We need to disable it, and then with visibility graphics 2x UV, we can check on the imported categories what's happening with that DWG file. We can check up here, we have all the layers, and it may be asked on the exam to check up and find some layers, turn on, off, and then with that get some dimensions or some reference to other types of line. So just check it and read it carefully so you can avoid if it's a tricky question. Let's see work sharing. For this purpose, I'm just going to open the file so you can see the two options when you are opening a file that it's work shared. You have here detach from central, or you can open it like that, but if you open a file that it's work sharing enable and you don't select this option, they may not let you open it. And then we have these two options, detach and preserve worksets or discard. We want to preserve it because we want to know where are the elements. So once the file is open, we can change the visibility, and remember that the first step for creating a multiple share model with central local protocol, it's set up worksets to be working with share levels and grids, and then you can create your own. You have a editable set, owner, borrowers, open, and visible in views. If you have any of these options being set up, that will apply the complete model. Then we have the options of grading active worksets that will help you find out which workset is the one that you're having. Turn it on. And also from visibility, you can change the characteristics of your elements. I'm looking here just to see seek from elements furniture. We set up apply. Something like this will show up. So you have elements and furniture D, and also elements and furniture D, and we have the other ones which are on inactive worksets. If we change the workset to become Z, we will only see those other elements. We will check the fillet regions. The fillet regions is a tool that it's located on annotate, and it's set up here on detail items. As you can recall, you have detail lines that will be drawn only on the plans that you choose from, regions, components, revision clouds, details, and isolation. So we have a fillet region and a masking region, and the property is really simple. The only thing is that you will draw an element. In this case, I can choose from a square, circle, polygon, whatever I need. You can also set up the lines you wanted that to be part of it, and then once it's selected, you can change up the types. You can duplicate. You have a fill pattern, a background, color. You can go duplicate and have hatch to. You can configure it as a model or a drafting one. If you choose model, you can pick those lines and align them to a three-dimensional elements. If you pick drafting, they will be just as a review. Also, you can set up your new ones. So I'm setting up a new model one. You can have your scale, you can have custom, also you can import patterns. So on the exam, it may be needed to set up an alignment or whatever. Just check it out. Next element to be reviewed is the detail components. You have it on this section that it's detail component or repeating detail component. Once you check the detail component, we have here just one single one, which is a brick. You can also create your detail components, and you can just place them on plans or elevations sections as well. And how does it work? You will have some reference from detail items. It has general properties, and you can just place it with the according reference. It works as a family as well. The other one is repeating detail component, which will hold a different type of detail component for being repeated through a line or an element, and you will also have some certain rules to change them. Next topic is the use of color schemes. We have the color schemes set up on the view. So remember first that you need to have a view that doesn't have everything linked, or at least the elements from color schemes. Turn it off. We have here color scheme location, color scheme background. We can turn it off, or we can disable the view template. And with that set, we can place a color scheme. We can make it from HVAC, rooms, spaces, just placing a general one with names. But as you can see, we're not looking at what's happening here. This is a trick part, since you need to know how these rooms are affected. And in this case, I know that it's because we're using parts, and the visibility is just showing us parts. We need to set up for the original in order to avoid being turned off by parts. Just keep that in mind. Also remember, you need to know how do you change your schemes, change name, room, legend, color, and to add properties. Next topic is using the tag by category function, or that it's on annotate. So we need to understand and learn how does the tags work. We have a tag by category that will ask for the elements that we have and the tags that we have placed. So as we can see, there are tags for furniture. We can check whose tags we have on the tag all, and it says we only have for mechanical equipment, room tags, and title. So what will happen in this case is that if we have something that it's a mechanical equipment, we can select it. In this case, this is a plumbing fixture. I'm just gonna edit it so it becomes mechanical equipment. And with that, the tag will work. What they will ask you on the exam is how do you use tags. You may need to place some tags. You may need to get a value or information from an element. So remember that from tags, you need to know how to create those tags. We have it in annotations, and you have a tag for each single type of category. A generic tag will serve most of the cases when you're designing it, but you need to set where is that tag to be working with. So I'm just going to place a furniture tag, and remember that the most powerful tool from tags is the label. That will do is just to set up all the parameters that are already on furniture or some shared parameters, and with that you may need to place it. One thing that happens to me is that they ask me for omni-class numbers, omni-class tiles, and we don't have anything configured on our files. So for example, in this case it says wood windows. If we place it back for the file of elements, it will give us a general overview of it's the omni-class title for those elements who are furniture. Next, we need to check up the use of dimension strings. You have dimensions on the tab of Annotate, and you have align, linear, angular, radial, diameter, arc length, spot coordinate, or spot slope. And what they may ask you is to use them to find out some certain distances between elements. So as you can imagine, if some of the exercises will ask you to get a distance, a measurement, or an area, you will be already using the dimension strings. Another important thing to know about Revit is how to use facing. So you may go on the Manage tab, and you have here the setup of faces. You have some general ones, and if you create a new one, it will go on time setting from the past to the future. Then you have face filters if you want to see all the show complete and the graphic overrides of those elements. So for example, each single element will have a configuration for face created, face demolish, and also each single view will have their own if it's working on a face existing, demolitions, construction, etc. So you need to manage those to find out parameters, elements, or other libraries that you have been created. For the exam, we need to know how to configure curtain walls. We have here just a generic curtain wall, and that's set up with a face completed. So we have all the characteristics of that on the parameters. We have a number of 35 beginning with no angle and offset, as well as a horizontal grid of 23 beginning. So that makes all of this set of panels at the same height and width. But if we change the number, we affect it to become 40. We modify the complete elements. Also, it will depend on how is the distance and which are the mullions that we place in the curtain wall. Just like that, it has changed the configuration, and also it may change if I change the other elements. So what's within the curtain wall? We have here a mullion setup for vertical mullions of rectangular 50 by 150, and as well they are asking for a fixed number, but we can also change that to become a fixed distance, maximum spacing, and other types of elements. You can also draw elements on a curtain wall, having draw a curtain grid, or changing the mullions. So you can set up and place for just one segment, in this example, 2 segments, or all the segments except the ones we're picking. Using stacked walls means that you're having a wall with divisions on a horizontal plane that will hold multiple walls. If you go to walls, you have at the end one that it's called stacked wall. You can use this one to duplicate any characteristics. So we're going to have, for starting, a generic 200 with the interior 79. Duplicate, generic 200, interior 79, and we will go to this panel to configure how they will be working with. So we go generic 200, not fillet, but 200. Another insert that will be interior 79, and from this what will be happening is that it has an interior part of 3 meters high and a variable height with the generic. If we want to change them, we can also change the size, but we need to reconfigure the volumes. Once we have done that, we can change that wall to become a stacked wall, the one that we just created. We'll have this division and different type of configuration. We need to set compound walls, and the compound walls are nothing else but creating a single wall that will hold sweeps or rebuilds. We go with the exterior one, and then we have on the structure the characteristics that it holds with all the materials, and its membrane layers, substrates, and structure. Then we have at this end if we set up a section to become section, we can set up sweeps and reveals. The sweeps will extend an element by adding a profile on a certain point. For example, I'm placing 0.5. And the reveal will do exactly the opposite thing, having an opening at a certain distance. So we can check up here, it's having an opening, having a sweep. So once we place them, they will give you something like this. And we can count what's the length or how is that element working in place on all the walls responding to that type. We need to check up system and component families. The important thing about that is that you may have the basic families, some families that are from components, and other ones that are system. For those who are system, you may need to have a component model in place and a properly selected category of a furniture or for another type of element. What it will do is that will enable you to create a family that it's inside the project but doesn't have as much as references as the one we will seek using the family templates or the RFA families. So what's important in here? Well, you need to know that the same rules will apply: reference plane, reference lines, the openings, the elements. And with that you can modify them, have reference planes, and change the volumes. Also, those families will be quantified, as well as the ones that are from components need to have a shared parameter in order to be selected. We also need to know how to review warnings. So you have it on the Manage tab, an icon that it's called Review Warnings, and it says we have one warning of walls being overlapped. If we open the warning, we will have both ID numbers and which elements are they holding up. So one thing that they may ask you is to find an element that has an ID, or which one it will respond to the ID of the warning that it's being placed. Changing the generic types means that you need to know how to change families that are already on the project and may need to have a different type of material or specification. In this case, the first thing you need to check up is that you're working actually with elements that can be edited. In this case, I'm working with parts, so the first thing will be to change the view template so it gets clean, and then change the visibility so it's not just with parts, it's with the original. So I'm choosing from a basic wall. It may need to be changing from a exterior wall or another element. For this type of question, there were some multiple answer and also match columns showing the number of the name of the type and how does it looks in a view or in a model. So just be aware of these types of settings. The same thing will apply with changing the component families. So for example, they may ask you to change the size or create a new type of some family. In this case, I'm just going to create closet 3. And you may need to change the values from the parameters, having the width or the height. But be aware, since they may ask you to check if the family is already been done properly, so you may need to edit it to check if the parameters respond, or if there are some parameters that aren't unlocked or have some problems. So I believe that if you know how to create families, you won't have any problems with this topic. We also need to know how to create topography from elements, from DWG files, or by points. So for creating topography, we have the massing and site, topo surface. We have these options for placing point, create import, simplify surface. We can go and select an import instance or a points file. In this case, we have this file. And it will ask us for selecting which layers we want to use to create that surface. So with that, it will create some topographic surface. You can also do it by points or by points file. Once our topography is being created, we also need to know how to create a building path. The building path will be just a general surface that will become a platform for our project. So if we create it like that, we'll create two pieces. The one that it's the path, and the other one will be the topography element that is making the difference between the topography already created and the platform. So you can change the characteristics of this, so it can go lower, and as well can go underground for creating a path. It will have as well its characteristics of volume, area, perimeter, and you can use it so you can have setting up properly your building. Create the stairs with landing, so we can go up to level 1 to check where is our visibility settings, and then we have the options here for creating a stair. We have a stair by component, the stair by sketch. If we place a stair by component, we can create it just with the number of risers and the proper configuration. In this case, we need to set up level 1 going up to level 2, and then we can place it however we want it. We can also set up multiple sets, but we need to just give enough space to the stair to be created. And it will create how the stair will be working in order to get up to the next level. Also remember that we have here all the configuration of number of risers, thread depth, and as well the other characteristics of calculation rules and other elements that need to be checked in order to complete the exam. You may also have to check out for mass families created from floors or from walls. In this case, the first thing is that you need to set up mass floors. You can create each level to create a floor, and it will make the transition between that and our mass model. And also you can set up from that mass floor. Now you can create a floor actually that it's from face, and that floor will correspond on your commercial or whatever you want it to set up. The same thing will apply with walls. If you select wall by face, you can get an external face, and it will become a wall, concrete wall of however you're working with. The next topic is to model the element material. For that you need to change the appearance of a material. So let's check off materials. You have an element. In this case I'm selecting a wall, and I have a structure. From the structure I'm using CMU blocks and paint. So for that, if I want to change it, I just need to select and to go where the material is being placed, and then change it. Be aware if they're asking for shading or a render appearance, because that may change a lot of the things. Also review that you don't have, or if the file has already the user appearance being locked up, just check it, because that may change the result of how does the element look. Remember that the appearance will reflect when they are unrealistic and the graphics on the shaded element. Also check up the patterns from surface and cut on each of your views. Another really simple option that you need to know that probably you haven't used, it's something called the room calculation point, that it's on almost families from furniture, mechanical equipment, specialty equipment. And what it happens is that you need to enable that they have a room calculation point. You can set it up from here, setting up the room calculation point, and this is how it looks. It's actually just a point that will set up where do they belong. So if you change it or move it according to where that point is setting up, will be the room they belong. So you need to set up that in order to find out the result the exam is expecting you. So each of these elements may have a room calculation point, or maybe hidden, but you need to turn it on, and it will depend on how the room calculation processes are going up. For placing railings, we have this tool for sketching a rail or place it on host. Sketching a rail will set up on the level the distance of the element. We can create multiple distance, and then we can create the rails. The important thing here is that depending on how you configure it is how it will work. So far we have a rail like this. It's been set up to have a height of 90 centimeters, so we can change it to 1.9. Also the type, if we want it rectangular or elliptical. From the top rail, and then here we have the construction of the structure. So we have 4 rails going down at a different height. So as you can see, we have changed those specifics, and then we can change also the balusters with the starting, end, and the main pattern. We need to check visibility graphics, since they may ask you to find out elements that are already hidden, or they may have a view which elements are hidden and you need to show them. So remember that you have visibility graphics. You need to be aware that the template needs to be off, otherwise you cannot be changing the characteristics of the view template. And with that said, you can change the category, the annotations, analytical model. If you have some filters or if you have some patterns that will hide some elements, you need to be aware of that, as well as if the section box is blocking them. But also remember that you may have some hidden items that you may not be seeing properly. So remember this function for checking manually hidden items, and for them you can just select them and change wherever you're trying to find out. Also remember that on plans, sometimes the view range can be a topic, so you may find questions surrounding the view range. Just review how you need to set it up so the elements can be seen. Let's check up for legends. So the legends are on the last panel of the project browser. It's, well, not the last one, but almost close to it. And we have it up from the families here, legends. So the legends, how do they work? You can have a legend for multiple sheets, and you can also export detail items or layer items. You can see here only the annotate component, legend component. So you can change them to see a back, a view, front, floor plan of each single type of family. So basically what you will do is to set up some elements, some items to check how they are aligned, what's the position, and how to change the sizes. Remember that when you're creating a legend, you need to set up the scale where it will be placing it from the views. I believe some of the main features for the exam is to know how to create schedules and sort them, because there are a lot of volumes, areas, and elements that have been asked, and you need to know how to place them. So basically remember that the schedules will appear here. We have scheduled quantities and also material takeoffs. You need to know the difference between those two, and once you have selected one of them, you can just place it and select the parameters you want to have. For example, I'm wanting the count, the family and type, also the level, maybe an asset that I need. And also remember that you have these available fields for room. So if you want to know which room they belong, you can add room name. And then the next thing would be to set up properly sorting and filter. Filter will select elements out, and sorting and grouping will help you having general order. Those elements you have grant rules or itemize. If you turn off itemize, they will go closer and they may have some quantities. And also remember that if there are some functions that you are not seeing, for example, if you want to have some calculations, you need to select the element and place calculate totals. The case of count doesn't matter, but for those who are areas or volume, you can check it up. The last topic to review is how to align sheets. So for example, you have a sheet, and the main tool used, you have here sheet comparison to create sheets, title blocks, issues, place a view, and you have the guide grid. They may ask you what's the main tool for creating proper sheets. It's Guide Grid, and actually the Guide Grid will guide you in order to create a panel where you can align properly the elements. So for example, I'm just aligning it so it gets closer to this line that I want to have it, and then I can move it. And the same thing will apply with the other borders. And once I have that line, I can also change the separation, spacing, the guide spacing, and also place it in a new view, so it will look the same, and I can align the views at the same type of elements. Some final recommendations. Take your time, you have 2 hours and 40 minutes, so I recommend you when you're doing your mock-up exam, count how much do you take doing it. I try to make this exam harder so you can check up against and you have something much more complex. This is the pilot course in English. If you like it, recommend it and evaluate it. Also, you can also ask for another course related or to translate one of the ones I have. There's a program of more than 20 courses regarding BIM that if you feel that you need someone, just ask me, set it up on the forums. And I hope you enjoy it. See you on next courses.